Ladies and gentlemen, kings and queens, entrepreneurs and visionaries, let me ask you a question that might shift the trajectory of your entire life. How do you start your day? Because hear me now, how you start determines how you finish. The most powerful people on this planet, not just the wealthy, not just the famous, but the purposeful, don't stumble into greatness by accident. They design it, and the blueprint starts with what they do before the world even wakes up. This is the power of a morning routine. Your morning is not just the beginning of the day, it's the beginning of your destiny. The way you show up in the first moments after you wake up sets a precedent for everything that follows. Think about this. When a plane takes off, the direction it chooses in the first few minutes determines where it will land hours later. A 5-degree shift at the start could mean the difference between New York and the middle of the Atlantic. Your morning works the same way. If you miss alignment by just a little, you can spend the rest of your day off course, chasing productivity but never catching purpose. Most people roll out of bed reacting. The alarm blares and they groan. The phone gets grabbed before their feet touch the floor. They scroll through Instagram. They check emails. They absorb notifications. From the very first second, their energy is being drained by someone else's agenda. They have unknowingly surrendered the steering wheel of their day to everything outside of them, and then they wonder why their life feels out of control. They're reacting to life instead of designing it. But people who win, leaders, entrepreneurs, visionaries, they do things differently. They understand that the secret to momentum is ownership. They own their morning because they know if they can dominate that first hour, they can dominate the next 23. They don't let circumstances dictate their rhythm. They dictate the rhythm and force circumstances to respond. They don't wake up to chaos. They wake up to command. They wake up with an internal declaration. This day doesn't happen to me. It happens through me. And this isn't about becoming robotic. It's about becoming intentional. There's a difference between existing and living. There's a difference between movement and progress. A powerful morning routine turns energy into direction. It creates focus. It builds emotional stability. And it sets the emotional tone for how you respond to everything that's coming at you throughout the day. Without a routine, you're hoping to stay strong. With a routine, you're strategizing for strength. You're preparing your mind to think, your body to move, your heart to lead, and your spirit to hear. Imagine this. You wake up, and instead of grabbing your phone, you grab your thoughts. You sit in silence. You stretch your body. You read something that challenges you. You speak affirmations out loud. You write down your goals. You connect with your purpose. You pray. You visualize. And in those quiet, early moments, when the world is still sleeping, you're already building. You're not behind, you're ahead. You've already taken the mental high ground. So now, when problems come, you don't panic. You're prepared. You're rooted. You've already won the war in the mind before the battle even showed up. Most people lose their day because they never claimed it. They're not late to work. They're late to themselves. They're not tired because life is hard. They're tired because they started the day in defeat. But you can change that. You can choose to start your morning in victory. You can wake up with a pattern that builds belief, builds discipline, builds self-respect. And when you do that repeatedly, day after day, week after week, something begins to change. Not just in your schedule, but in your soul. You walk different. You think different. You attract different. Because you are becoming different, momentum isn't speed, it's alignment. When your actions, your thoughts, and your intentions are in sync from the moment you open your eyes, you generate a kind of power that's not just physical, it's spiritual. It's not just tactical, it's transformational. That's why some people seem to get more done in a day than others do in a week. It's not about how hard they grind, it's about how clearly they start. They aren't chasing clarity during the day. they're carrying it from the morning. And that momentum is contagious. The discipline from your morning shows up in your meetings. The clarity from your journaling sharpens your conversations. The peace from your quiet time carries into how you respond to pressure. The body you moved with intention gives you energy hours later when others are burning out, because you didn't just wake up, you showed up. You didn't just roll out of bed, you rose up with purpose. You're not surviving the day, you're shaping it. You're commanding it, you're walking into it like it belongs to you, because it does. Discipline is not something you do when it's convenient. It's something you become when you've decided convenience is no longer your master. See, everyone wants success, but not everyone wants structure. Everyone wants freedom, but not everyone wants foundation. What most people call discipline is really just decision backed by consistency. It's not the loud moments that define your destiny. It's the quiet repetitions, the unseen hours, the choices you make when nobody's clapping, when nobody's watching, when no one is validating what you're building because they don't yet see the vision you're working toward. The truth is, most people wait for motivation to hit them like lightning. They say, when I feel ready, I'll move. When I feel inspired, I'll create. When the timing feels right, I'll start. But those who walk in purpose understand that feelings are unreliable fuel. Feelings fluctuate. Feelings lie. Feelings will have you building one day and doubting the next. But discipline doesn't listen to feelings. Discipline listens to your future. Discipline is the voice of your higher self, your future self, your destined self calling out to the present version of you saying, keep going. I'm waiting for you on the other side of this obedience. That's what separates those who dream from those who do. A dream without discipline is a distraction. A vision without discipline is just a fantasy. But when discipline enters the equation, you go from wishing to walking, from intention to execution, from delay to dominion. You stop needing hype because you're moving on principle, and principle always outperforms hype because it's not based on emotion. It's based on truth. People ask, how do I stay consistent? The answer is you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop letting your mood vote on your mission. You wake up early even when you're tired. You stick to your routine even when it's inconvenient. You do what you said you would do long after the feeling that made you say it has left. Because discipline means honoring your word to yourself. It's not about perfection, it's about integrity. And integrity is what builds trust not just with other people, but with you. See, when you keep promises to yourself, you begin to trust your own power. And when you trust your power, you stop waiting for external permission. You start realizing that you've got everything you need already within you. Discipline is not punishment, it's preparation. Athletes don't train every day because it's fun. They train every day because they know there's a day coming when the lights will be on, the moment will arrive, and the crowd will be watching. And it's not in that moment that you rise to greatness, it's in the grind before the spotlight. Discipline prepares you for what life will throw at you so that when others fold, you stay firm. When others quit, you keep building. When others break down, you break through, and the beautiful thing about discipline is that it compounds. Just like money grows through interest, your discipline grows through repetition. One small act of consistency today makes the next act easier, and eventually those little disciplines turn into massive momentum. Suddenly, you're not struggling to start, you're struggling to stop, because now discipline has become identity. You're not trying to be consistent, you are consistent. You're not forcing focus, you are focused. And when discipline becomes identity, destiny becomes inevitable. Let's make this practical. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You start by showing up when it's hard. You start by doing the thing you said you'd do for 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. You start by setting a time to wake up and honoring it. You start by taking care of your body even when it resists. You start by saying no to what distracts you, even when it looks good, because you know it's not God. You start small, but you stay steady, and that steadiness, that's what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. The marketplace doesn't reward potential. It rewards performance, and performance is powered by preparation. You can't expect to show up and win in public if you haven't been disciplined in private. You can't demand the results of the elite while living by the patterns of the average. Discipline is the bridge between desire and destiny. It's the structure that supports the weight of your success. Without it, your talent will collapse, your gifts will go unused, your purpose will sit dormant. But with it, even your smallest efforts become powerful when you choose discipline. You choose to become the architect of your life instead of a bystander in your story. You stop being driven by the winds of emotion and start being driven by the engine of intention. You take command. You take responsibility. You wake up every day and tell your future, "I'm coming for you." And you don't stop when it gets hard. You double down, because you understand that every act of discipline is a brick in the foundation of your legacy. Before the world ever rewards you with success, it will first test the way you think, because the battlefield of greatness is always won in mind before it's won in the marketplace. You can have the best strategy, the most advanced tools, the sharpest skills, but if your mindset is full of fear, doubt, and confusion, all that talent becomes trapped inside hesitation and indecision. The world is not waiting on your resources, it's waiting on your revelation. The moment you realize that the limitation is not what you don't have, it's what you don't yet believe. You don't get paid in the marketplace for activity, you get paid for clarity. And clarity is not something you stumble upon by accident. It is forged in the furnace of intentional thought. That's why the most successful people spend more time cultivating their inner world than trying to chase results in the outer world. They know that if the roots are deep, the tree can weather any storm. They understand that real productivity flows from peace, and peace comes when your mind is aligned with your mission. You can't hear strategy in the middle of noise, and if you start your day in mental chaos, you will enter every room with the wrong posture, the wrong questions, the wrong energy. The mind is the control tower of your destiny. If you let fear sit in the pilot's seat, it will fly your future into a mountain. If you let distractions run the cockpit, they will steer your life in circles. But if you train your mind to lead, if you condition your thoughts to align with your purpose, you begin to rise above the chaos. You begin to operate not from survival, but from vision. And when you lead with vision, you attract resources, you attract people, you attract opportunity. Because the marketplace doesn't just respond to your hustle, it responds to your confidence, your certainty, your presence, and all of that is rooted in the way you think. See, most people don't fail because they don't have enough money or enough time or enough connections. They fail because they never renew the way they see themselves. They're trying to build a new life with an old identity. They're trying to lead others when they haven't yet learned to lead their own thoughts. You cannot build $1 million business with a minimum wage mindset. You cannot rise to influence if your thinking is still stuck in insecurity. That's why your morning routine is sacred, not because it's trendy, but because it's the time when you reset the lens through which you see everything. You don't just prepare your schedule, you prepare your soul. You don't just rehearse your tasks, you reprogram your beliefs. You look yourself in the mirror and speak to the person you're becoming, not the person you've been. It's not enough to move fast, you have to move from the right source. Activity without alignment leads to burnout, but when your mind is rooted in clarity, peace, and power, You can move slower and still accomplish more. That's why mindset is not a luxury, it's a prerequisite. You don't get to skip this step and expect to succeed long term. The people who rise and stay there are not just skilled, they're stable. They've done the inner work, they've confronted the lies, they've replaced insecurity with identity. They've made peace with who they are, so they don't need approval from everybody else. And when your mindset is right, you stop begging for opportunity and start attracting it. You stop chasing after clients and start commanding presence. You walk into rooms differently because you're not there to prove, you're there to serve. You're not desperate, you're decisive. You're not reactive, you're rooted. And when you are rooted, you make decisions from a place of power, not panic. That's how you build things that last. That's how you lead movements, not just moments, but you've got to protect it. Mindset is not a one-time event. It's daily warfare. Every day you will face thoughts that try to shrink you, voices that try to limit you, patterns that try to pull you back into small thinking. That's why this has to be intentional. You wake up and choose your thoughts before the world chooses them for you. You remind yourself who you are before someone else defines you. You create space for truth before the world tries to sell you lies. You guard your focus like it's treasure, because it is when you win the battle in the mind, the battles in business become strategic, not emotional. You stop being tossed by every challenge, every rejection, every slow week, and you start operating from a higher vantage point. You're no longer just reacting to the market, you're creating from mastery. And mastery doesn't come from doing more, it comes from being more. And being more starts with believing more. Your behavior will never rise higher than the identity you've accepted as truth, because we don't act according to what we want. We act according to who we believe we are. Every action you take, every habit you form, every goal you set or abandon is tied not just to discipline, but to the identity you've internalized. That's why you can attend every seminar, read every book, download every productivity tool, but if your internal identity still whispers that you're inconsistent, that you're average, that you're not the kind of person who follows through, you will always default to what you believe about yourself. Instead of what you desire for yourself, you don't rise to the level of your vision, you fall to the level of your systems, and your systems are shaped by your self-concept. If you see yourself as someone who always quits when it gets hard, you'll quit again. If you see yourself as someone who procrastinates, you'll procrastinate again. If you see yourself as someone who only functions under pressure, you'll keep waiting for chaos to produce movement. But if you start to shift your identity, even just a little, everything begins to change. When you wake up and say, "I am someone who follows through," and then you act on it, you are not just forming a new habit, you are forming a new identity. You're laying new tracks in your brain, new paths in your soul, new patterns in your behavior. It starts small. You wake up earlier than usual, you work out when you don't feel like it, you pray even when it feels routine, you read even when you're tired, you write the business plan, you make the sales call, you do the thing. And every time you do, you send a message to your brain, "This is who I am now. Not I'm trying, not I hope I become, but this is who I already am," and the brain, being a faithful servant, begins to shape your thoughts, emotions, and decisions to match that new identity. You're no longer acting out of pressure, you're acting out of alignment. The people who succeed long-term are not the most talented, they are the most transformed. They've made a decision about who they are, and then they live from that truth every single day. And that identity becomes a compass, guiding them through distractions, through criticism, through setbacks. When they get knocked down, they get up not because they're trying to prove something, but because they know that who they are is not compatible with staying down. That's why identity is more powerful than motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Identity stays rooted, and from that root, you produce fruit. You have to speak it before you feel it. You have to believe it before you see it. You have to embody it before the results show up. And you don't wait until you feel qualified, because most of the time, the calling comes before the competence. It's your job to rise into what's already been placed inside you. Your routine is not about checking off tasks, it's about reinforcing truth. Every day that you show up, you're not just being productive, you're building a case in your mind for who you are. You're gathering evidence. And the more evidence you gather, the stronger your conviction becomes eventually. It becomes automatic. You no longer have to fight to show up. You show up because it's who you are. You no longer negotiate with laziness because laziness is no longer part of your identity. You no longer wait for approval because you've already approved of the version of you that walks in purpose, that leads with power, that operates with precision, and from that place you create a ripple effect. Because identity doesn't just shift your behavior, it shifts your results. It shifts your income. It shifts your relationships. It shifts the way people respond to you, because people can smell alignment. People can sense when you walk in authenticity. The room shifts when you do, and you've got to protect that identity, because the world will always try to sell you an easier one that fits in, one that plays small, one that avoids risk. But that version can't hold your purpose. That version can't carry the weight of the assignment on your life. So you choose the higher identity every single morning. You wake up and declare, "This is who I am." You don't wait for evidence, you become the evidence. You don't ask for signs, you are the sign. You are the walking result of a disciplined, intentional, unshakable identity that refuses to bend under pressure and refuses to shrink under expectation and refuses to settle for anything less than purpose fulfilled. So here's the truth. You don't need more time. You don't need more motivation. You need a system. You need a standard. You need a morning routine that aligns with your destiny, because when you master your morning, you stop being a servant to circumstance, and you become a steward of success. Wake up with purpose, rise with power, build with discipline, and watch what happens when the world starts to move at the rhythm you set. Thank you.